Hello everyone, my name is Megan Dankert and I did my capstone project on the 19th Amendment. Most Americans think the ability to vote was always a right for everyone and you got it if you were an American citizen, but that's not the case. American women had been denied the right to vote for many years. In some states, however, women did get granted the right to vote before the 19th Amendment was ratified. Those states that granted that to women were Wyoming, New Jersey, and Utah. The women in other states also wanted to have a voice in voting, and so they initiated the women's suffrage movement, which was a necessary precedent for the passage of the 19th Amendment. In 1776, New Jersey became the first state in the United States to allow some women the right to vote. The state constitution restricted the vote to property owners only, but they did not mention sex or race. For 30 years, New Jersey women who met property qualification were active in local, state, and national elections, but in 1807, New Jersey took the vote away from women and free black men when they passed election laws restricting voters' rights to tax-paying white males. New Jersey women did not regain the right to vote until the 19th Amendment's ratification in 1920. Drafted in 1787, the United States Constitution did not specify eligibility requirements for voting, which left the power to the states. Before 1920, only a constitutional restriction prohibited states from barring voters based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Nevertheless, the state's power to determine a voter's eligibility made the struggle of women's voting rights a piece-by-piece process from the earliest days through the first decades of the 21st century. In July 1848, in Seneca Falls, New York, the hometown of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the Seneca Falls Convention launched the women's right movement and also called for women's suffrage. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony were two of the most influential advocates in the early fight for women's right to vote. Many meetings were held by Senate committees on privileges and elections, but they were not encouraging. While many voiced their support, several committee members paid more attention to their newspapers or stared off into space. Ultimately, the bill was rejected, and for 41 more years, it was reintroduced every single year. Activist Alice Paul had little trouble getting President Woodrow Wilson to pass the 19th Amendment. When Alice couldn't get President Wilson's attention, she established the Silent Sentinels group. The Silent Sentinels broke new nonviolent ground. The Sentinels group began protesting outside the White House on January 10, 1917. And over the next 2.5 years, they spent 6 days a week outside the White House holding up pro-empowerment signs. Police officers began to arrest the Silent Sentinels, including Alice Paul herself, for obstructing traffic. While incarcerated, Alice organized a hunger strike, which drove guards to force-feed captive activists and deny the protesters water. One protester was handcuffed to the bars and nearly placed in a straitjacket and gagged for talking to fellow inmates. Some activists emerged from the ordeal so weak that the doctors feared for their lives. As a result, Wilson's stance on women's suffrage shifted from half-hearted support to total promotion. President Wilson tried to get the 19th Amendment passed during a national voting in 1918, but fell short. Finally, with World War I still raging, Wilson officially endorsed what became the 19th Amendment. A day after he released a statement, the House passed the measure. Riding high on the victory, Wilson addressed the Senate in person, saying, and I quote, "We have made partners of women in this war. Shall we admit them only to a partnership of suffering and sacrifice and toil, and not to a partnership of privilege and right?" Despite the efforts of President Wilson, the amendment fell short by just 2 votes. A few months later, Congress tried passing it again, and it missed the mark by 1 vote in the Senate. On August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment was proclaimed by the Secretary of State as being part of the Constitution of the United States. After the relentless battle by diverse activists throughout the United States history to secure voting rights for all American women, in 1920, millions of women finally won the right to vote when the 19th Amendment was ratified. The 19th Amendment prohibited the states from denying the vote based on sex, and it reads, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." Although the 19th Amendment was passed, it still did not open the polls for all women. As a result, the passage of 19th Amendment, millions of women remained unable to vote for reasons other than sex. But millions of women had gained the right to vote from their states. But millions more remained excluded from the polls. Throughout history, women did not have equal rights as men did just by being a United States citizen. However, after the 19th Amendment was passed, American women had the right to vote that many activists had been fighting decades for. The 19th Amendment was a landmark victory for women all over the nation. American demographic organization expanded drastically in 1920 when the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified.